I never imagined I'd be sharing this story, but here I am, still trying to make sense of how my life turned upside down. My wife Carrie and I met during our sophomore year of college. We were both part of the campus environmental club, passionate about making a difference. I remember the first time I saw her, standing at the front of the room, her eyes sparkling as she talked about organizing a river cleanup. I was smitten from that moment. We started dating a few months later, after I finally worked up the courage to ask her out. Our first date was a disaster. I spilled coffee all over myself, and we got caught in a sudden downpour without umbrellas. But somehow, that disaster turned into the best night of my life. We ended up talking for hours in a 24-hour diner, soaked to the bone but laughing like we'd known each other forever. From there, our relationship blossomed. We were inseparable throughout college, supporting each other through late-night study sessions, celebrating our victories, and comforting each other through our losses. When we graduated, we decided to stay in our college town. Carrie got a job at a local nonprofit, and I started working for a tech startup. We got married 3 years after graduation, in a small ceremony by the river we'd cleaned up together all those years ago. It felt like the perfect beginning to our life together. We bought a small house, adopted a dog named Buddy, and settled into what I thought was domestic bliss. For 5 years, everything seemed perfect. We had our routines, Sunday brunches, movie nights, weekend hikes with Buddy. We talked about starting a family, even started setting aside money for it. I thought we were on the same page about everything. But then, about 8 months ago, things started to change. It was subtle at first. Carrie started spending more time on her phone, often smiling at texts from someone she called her work friend. I didn't think much of it at the time. Carrie had always been social, and I was glad she was making new friends at work. Then she started coming home later, saying she was working on a big project. I supported her, even though I missed our time together. I'd cook dinner and leave a plate in the microwave for her, which she'd usually eat alone while I was already in bed. As weeks turned into months, the distance between us grew. Our conversations became shorter, more perfunctory. When I tried to talk to her about it, she'd brush me off, saying she was just stressed about work. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. I couldn't fathom the alternative. Valentine's Day was when I first felt that something was really wrong. I had planned a special evening, dinner at the Italian restaurant where we had celebrated our first anniversary, followed by a walk in the park where we had our first kiss. But 2 days before, Carrie told me she had to visit her parents. It had been 6 months since she'd seen them, she said, and her mom wasn't feeling well. I was disappointed, but I understood. Family is important after all. I suggested going with her, but she said it would be a short trip, and I shouldn't take time off work. So I stayed home, had a pizza, and watched old movies with Buddy. A week passed, and things didn't improve. If anything, they got worse. Carrie was barely home, always out with friends or working late. One night, while using our shared laptop, I noticed her Gmail account was still logged in. I know I shouldn't have, but something in my gut told me to look. What I found shattered my world. There were receipts for men's shoes, size 11 when I wear a 9. A leather wallet, far more expensive than anything I'd buy for myself. A hoodie from a brand I'd never heard of. And then, the kicker, a receipt from Build-A-Bear, dated 3 days after our anniversary in November. We hadn't exchanged gifts that year because Carrie said money was tight at the nonprofit, and we should save instead. As I dug deeper, I remembered Carrie mentioning a new friend she'd been sending memes to. His profile picture was a frog, and I noticed Carrie had started following a bunch of frog meme pages around the same time this friend appeared. It seemed like such a small thing, but in light of everything else, it felt significant. I felt sick. My mind was racing, trying to piece together all the little things I'd dismissed over the past months. The late nights, the secretive texting, the sudden interest in frogs. It all pointed to one devastating conclusion. I called my twin sister, Sarah. She's always been my rock, the person I turn to when things get tough. When we were kids, she was the one who stood up to bullies for me, who encouraged me to join clubs and make friends when I was too shy. I needed her now more than ever. I told her everything, my voice shaking as I relayed each painful discovery. Sarah listened patiently, then said words I'll never forget. You deserve the truth, no matter how much it hurts. Together, we hatched a plan. We created a fake Instagram account, using a frog as the profile picture. It was a long shot, but we had to know the truth. That night, Carrie and I had a fight. It was about something stupid, dishes left in the sink, but it felt like the culmination of months of tension. Looking back, I think part of me was trying to provoke a reaction, to get her to confess or slip up. But she just got angry, accused me of nitpicking, and stormed off to the guest room. At 3 a.m., Sarah and I put our plan into action. From the fake account, she sent Carrie a simple message. "I miss you." The response came almost instantly. "I miss you too." My heart sank. The conversation continued. Carrie mentioned visiting next Sunday. When asked where they'd meet, she replied, "At our favorite spot, your sweet home." Our home. The home we'd bought together, where we'd talked about raising our future children. I couldn't take it anymore. With Sarah by my side, I confronted Carrie. I showed her the messages, the receipts, everything. She tried to deny it at first, claiming it was just a friend. But as I laid out all the evidence, her lies crumbled. She broke down, admitted to the affair, tried to apologize, but her words felt hollow, drowned out by the sound of my world collapsing. The next morning, I contacted a divorce lawyer. I couldn't stay with someone who had betrayed me so completely. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I'd spend my life with, was gone. In her place was a stranger who had lied to my face for months. As I write this, I'm still in shock. The divorce process has started, and it's brutal. Carrie's trying to paint herself as the victim, claiming I drove her to cheat by being distant and unattentive. But I know the truth. I was always there, always tried to communicate. She was the one who pulled away. Every day brings a new painful revelation. The shoes, the wallet, the hoodie, all gifts for her lover. The Build-A-Bear, a custom-made frog because of course it was. Even Buddy seems confused, whining at the door of the guest room where Carrie's been sleeping. Friends and family are shocked. We'd always been the perfect couple in their eyes. But as news of our divorce spreads, more people are coming forward with things they'd noticed, but never mentioned. Carrie and a man at a cafe, holding hands. Carrie's car parked outside an unfamiliar apartment building late at night. All the pieces of a puzzle I'd been too blind to see. I don't know what the future holds. Right now, I'm just trying to get through each day. Some moments I'm angry, others I'm devastated. But I know I can't stay with someone who could betray me like this. I deserve better. I deserve honesty, loyalty, and love. Buddy and I are staying with Sarah for now. Being in our house, surrounded by memories of what I thought was a happy marriage, is too painful. I'm grateful for my sister's support, for giving me a safe place to fall apart and start putting myself back together. This isn't the life I imagined for myself, but it's the life I have now, and somehow I'll find a way forward. If you've read this far, thank you for listening to my story. If you're going through something similar, know that you're not alone. We'll get through this, one day at a time. First update. It's been 6 months since my last post, and a lot has changed. I've moved out of Sarah's place and into a small apartment of my own. Buddy's with me. In the divorce, Carrie said she couldn't take care of a dog with her new lifestyle. I'm grateful for his company. Having him around gives me a reason to get out of bed on the tough days. I've been trying to move on with my life, focusing on details. It's reopened wounds I thought were starting to heal, but another part of me is grateful for the knowledge. It reaffirms that I made the right decision in ending our marriage. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the early days of our relationship, trying to pinpoint where things went wrong. Was there a moment I missed? A sign I should have seen? Or was Carrie just really good at hiding her true self? I thought about our last vacation together, just a month before I discovered the affair. We'd gone to the beach, spent lazy days sunbathing and evenings walking along the shore. Carrie had seemed happy, relaxed. Was it all an act? Or was she already planning her exit, using that trip as a final goodbye? The next day, I called my therapist and scheduled an emergency session. I've been seeing her since the divorce started, and she's been a huge help in processing everything. She reminded me that it's normal to have setbacks, that healing isn't linear. We talked about setting boundaries, about how it might be best to avoid contact with Carrie's family and friends for a while. As the weeks have passed, I've been trying to channel my emotions into something positive. I've thrown myself into new hobbies. I've started learning to play the guitar, something I've always wanted to do, but never found the time for when I was married. I've also started volunteering at a local animal shelter. Being around the dogs reminds me of when Buddy was a puppy, of simpler, happier times. Work has been a welcome distraction. I've taken on some new projects, pushing myself professionally in ways I never did before. My boss has noticed, and there's talk of a possible promotion. It's nice to have something positive to focus on, a reminder that not every part of my life is defined by Carrie's betrayal. I've also been spending more time with my family. Sarah and I have weekly dinner dates, and I've been visiting my parents more often. They've been incredibly supportive throughout this whole ordeal. Dad, who's always been a man of few words, surprised me by sitting me down and sharing his own experience with heartbreak from before he met Mom. It was a side of him I'd never seen before, and it helped me feel less alone. As I write this update, I'm still processing all this new information. The anger I thought I'd moved past has resurfaced, but I'm trying not to let it consume me. I know that Carrie's current situation isn't my problem. Her choices led her there, and it's not my responsibility to worry about her happiness. Still, it's a sobering reminder that the grass isn't always greener. Cheating doesn't just hurt the person being cheated on, it often leads to pain for everyone involved. I hope Carrie finds the strength to leave her abusive relationship, not for my sake, but for hers. No one deserves to be treated that way, no matter what they've done. For now, I'm focusing on myself, on building a life I can be proud of, one that doesn't revolve around the betrayal I experienced. It's not easy, but I'm taking it one day at a time. And each day, I feel a little stronger, a little more like myself. The man I was before Carrie's betrayal, but wiser, more cautious, and ultimately, I hope, better. Buddy's nudging my hand as I type this, reminding me it's time for his walk. Life goes on, and right now, that walk is the most important thing in my world. Thanks for listening, Reddit. Your support on my last post meant more than you know. Second update. It's been a year since my divorce from Carrie, and I thought I was finally moving on. I had settled into a new routine, made new friends through my volunteer work at the animal shelter, and even started dating again. Nothing serious, just a few coffee dates here and there. But it was progress, a sign that I was healing. Buddy and I had fallen into a comfortable rhythm. Our morning walks became my favorite part of the day, a quiet time to gather my thoughts before diving into work. I'd been promoted at my job, taking on more responsibilities and challenges. It was stressful at times, but it felt good to be growing professionally. I'd also started a small garden on my apartment balcony. There was something therapeutic about nurturing these little plants, watching them grow day by day. It reminded me that growth is possible, even after devastation. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Last month, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, I was shocked to hear Carrie's voice on the other end. She was sobbing, barely coherent. Between her tears, she managed to tell me she was at the hospital. She begged me to come, saying she had no one else to turn to. My mind raced back to our college days. There was a time when Carrie had no one but me. Her parents had cut her off when she chose to major in environmental studies instead of business like they wanted. I remembered holding her as she cried, assuring her that we'd figure it out together. We'd been a team then, facing the world side by side. I know I should have hung up. After everything she put me through, I had no obligation to help her. But something in her voice, the raw desperation, made me pause. It reminded me of that scared college girl I'd once comforted. Against my better judgment, I agreed to go. The drive to the hospital was surreal. I hadn't seen Carrie in months, not since the divorce was finalized. As I navigated the familiar streets, memories flooded back. Our first apartment, barely bigger than a closet but filled with so much love and hope. The park where we used to have picnics every Sunday. The coffee shop where I'd planned to propose before deciding it wasn't grand enough and opting for the riverside instead. When I arrived at the hospital, I found Carrie in the emergency room. The sight of her made my stomach lurch. She had a black eye, a split lip, and was cradling her arm. My heart sank as I realized what must have happened. Frog Boy, it seemed, had escalated from emotional abuse to physical violence. As we waited for the doctor, Carrie broke down and told me everything. Her relationship with Frog Boy had become increasingly controlling and abusive. He monitored her phone, isolated her from friends and family, and frequently berated her. This wasn't the first time he had hit her, but it was the worst. I listened in stunned silence. Part of me wanted to say, "I told you so," to remind her that she had brought this on herself by cheating. But seeing her so broken, so vulnerable, I couldn't bring myself to twist the knife. Instead, I found myself holding her hand as she cried, just like I had all those years ago in our dorm room. The doctor confirmed that Carrie had a fractured wrist in addition to her other injuries. She would need to stay overnight for observation due to a mild concussion. When the nurse asked if there was anyone who could stay with her, Carrie looked at me with pleading eyes. I nodded, more out of habit than anything else. As Carrie drifted off to sleep, aided by pain medication, I found myself alone with my thoughts. I texted Sarah to let her know what was happening. Her response was immediate. "Are you sure you want to get involved?" I wasn't sure, but I also knew I couldn't just walk away. I thought about how different our lives had become. A year ago, I would have given anything to have Carrie need me like this. Now, it just felt complicated. I cared about her well-being, yes, but the love I once felt had been replaced by a dull ache, a reminder of what could have been. The night passed slowly. I dozed off in the uncomfortable hospital chair, waking every time a nurse came to check on Carrie. In those quiet hours, I found myself reflecting on our history. I thought about our college days, when we'd stay up all night talking about our dreams. How we were going to change the world, one river cleanup at a time. I remembered the day I proposed, how her eyes lit up as I got down on one knee by the riverbank. I recalled the countless small moments that had made up our life together. Lazy Sunday mornings, inside jokes, the way she'd scrunch her nose when she laughed. But I also remembered the pain of the past year, the sleepless nights, the anger, the overwhelming sense of betrayal. The way my trust had been shattered, not just in Carrie, but in my own judgment. How could I have been so blind? As morning broke, Carrie woke up. She looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, a far cry from the confident woman I had married. When the doctor came in to discuss her discharge, Carrie asked if she could stay with me for a few days. She had nowhere else to go, she said. Her family had cut her off after the cheating scandal, and she had no close friends left. I was torn. On one hand, I wanted to help someone in need, the part of me that had fallen in. Love with Carrie all those years ago, couldn't bear to see her suffer. On the other hand, I was afraid of getting sucked back into Carrie's drama. I had worked hard to rebuild my life, to find peace and happiness again. Was I willing to risk that? In the end, I made a compromise. I helped her check into a women's shelter that specializes in helping domestic violence survivors. I even paid for a week's stay, giving her time to figure out her next steps. As I helped her settle in, I gave her the number of my therapist, encouraging her to seek help. The shelter staff assured me that they would help Carrie file a police report against Frog Boy and assist her in getting a restraining order. They also had programs to help her find a job and get back on her feet. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was the best I could do while still maintaining my own boundaries. As I drove home from the shelter, my emotions were all over the place. I felt angry at Frog Boy for his abuse, at Carrie for putting herself in this situation, and at myself for still caring enough to help. I felt sad for the life we could have had if she hadn't cheated. And I felt a strange sense of closure. Seeing Carrie so broken, so far from the confident woman I had married, made me realize how much I had grown since our divorce. The pain of her betrayal had forged me into a stronger person. I had rebuilt my life, created new connections, and rediscovered parts of myself I had neglected during our marriage. When I got home, Buddy greeted me with his usual enthusiasm, reminding me of the simple joys in my life now. I took him for a long walk, using the time to clear my head. As we strolled through the park, I found myself feeling grateful for the peace I'd found in my new life. That evening, as I tended to my balcony garden, I realized something. In helping Carrie, I wasn't reopening old wounds or harboring hopes of reconciliation. Instead, I was acting from a place of compassion, extending kindness to another human being in need, regardless of our history. It felt like a sign of how far I'd come, that I could face my past without being consumed by it. I don't know what the future holds for Carrie. I hope she gets the help she needs and finds a way to break the cycle of abusive relationships. But I know that her path and mine have diverged for good. As for me, I'm looking forward. I have a date next week with someone I met at the animal shelter. I'm not rushing into anything, but I'm open to the possibility of finding love again. I'm planning a camping trip with Sarah next month, something we've been talking about doing since we were kids. Life is unpredictable, full of twists and turns I never could have anticipated. But I'm learning to navigate these changes, to find strength in the face of adversity. Whatever comes next, I know I can handle it. After all, I've survived the worst already. Everything from here on out is just another step forward.